But I just mean like 2006. So this book came out in 2006, right? We already talked about the first one, Twilight, last episode, and that was 2005. And then the series kind of got big and it started taking off. And I think it was like boom, 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 like they just released one after the other. Because she'd already been working on these books. Like I think she said she started writing the first one in 2003. Takes a couple years to get that published. By the time that got published, she'd probably already finished the sequel. And then you could just easily just bang them out when there is a demand, kind of thing. Uh, but I just like that whole like that's like it's and that's what I started thinking about. Like it's easy to make fun of those kind of bands that we would be like. And she's a little older than us, right? So she wouldn't have been as in to the emo stuff, but she's not that much older than us that she was like
I mean, she
oblivious.
was okay. Yeah, and I had like I said this when we were reading Twilight again, as a person who coming to terms with the fact that as an adult, I'm still enjoying this. And I'm just accepting it and like fuck it. But
Well, that's what I mean.
what was I gonna say?
Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Oh
Talk.
yeah, no, like I mean she was 29, 30
Right.
when she wrote Twilight
Like
and she wrote the first book. And like one of the first things I was like, it's like, how can you write this? Like as at that age, like how can you write these characters this way? And that's not like, to be a dick, like sincerely like trying to understand like what had to be going on in her brain. And we were sort of like cracking jokes about her like being a Mormon.
oh yeah.
Like
Well, I think it's more
and like
important.
all
Like
that
it's
shit.
yeah, we joke about it, but like it is a factor in terms of.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all met Mormons, right? I don't know, listeners, if you've met Mormons, but they tend not to be the most cool people.
I
on
mean,
a
there's no denying though that like she does call it like whether it was on purpose or not, and I can't say. I don't fucking know. But she does sort of really tap into that you know, teenage girl insecurity
Yeah,
really
and you can
like
speak to that better than me. I mean, I that's the one thing I'm.
perfectly. And not I'm not saying like in a way that makes the story better or something, but definitely in a way that successfully I think draws in a reader who is going to be like 17 or has any memory of being 17. And I think that like is probably a lot of what made it successful. I mean, obviously the romance angle.
And it wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't like the height of emo music, emo
Yeah.
fashion, emo black nails, big blow dried
She's
hairs,
different. It's
studded
cool when
belts.
she's different.
Yeah, girls wearing their dad's bowling shirt, like like we talked about
She's
last.
weird.
Like it was
She reads.
everybody wearing Chuck Taylors,
Yeah.
all of that, dude. Like it
Like
was.
the hipster thing was coming around. I mean, like I know that that's existed as long as fucking time, right? But like,
Well,
I guess every generation has a moment or something, and
I think it's a good point.
that leading up to ours.
I think that's a good point because tying in, I know we're talking about
It all
music.
came into style.
What?
It all kind of came into style to some
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about the history like it did. Like okay, so indie rock was around since the '80s, right? Like indie rock really started to become a thing, and then like emo definitely came out of like the hipster indie rock scene from the '90s, right? Like emo definitely came out of
Yeah, a
that,
little bit of like,
and then
the wannabe punk rock kids.
right, but then emo became like the cool cultural thing for a few years. Like even Green Day like started doing
Yeah,
like more of an
wearing
emo thing,
eyeliner.
whereas they were more. And I mean, they still doing the pop punk, but they were much more punk in the '90s before emo was a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of.
Well, they were more like my dad listened to Green Day until probably until like up until American Idiot.
Oh, did he really?
Like that was, I mean, I learned of Green Day because my dad had Dookie.
Oh wow,
Like, great album.
damn dude, he was ahead of it. My parents were definitely not that cool in terms of music.
My dad's pretty cool in terms of music.
Yeah. My parents were boomer rock, so like my dad was all
I
about like
mean, my dad was all that too,
yeah,
but he also, you know,
which is great
like
stuff.
I remember
Yeah.
playing local natives for him, and he was like really into the drums on that album, Gorilla Manor.
Yeah, I never liked local natives when they blew up for that like 3 years that they did, but I know
I
they were
mean,
big.
that album is good. And every once in a while they put out a hit, but yeah,
Right.
they're not all winners, and they're nothing like super special.
Yeah.
That was also past the peak nostalgia, like music of my youth.
Well, that's what I mean, and I think I was conflating those because this is such a part of it. Like that's the whole reason I'm bringing any of this up, and we're talking about like albums on a book podcast now. Like because I think it is so ingrained into this series, this particular vampire series. There have been vampire series before, there have been vampire series since. This one is particularly tied in to the emo movement happening between 2004 and like 2010. All right, like that is literally would not have existed if that was not a cultural moment for like that 6 years.